What's up, everybody? It's Andy from Nerds on the Run, coming at you once again with an update for the drama going on with Sony, with Disney, Marvel. Um, I did have some thoughts and reactions to this when it initially came out, but being one of the biggest Spider Man fans around, this is more for me, I guess, doing some processing. But I did come across some interesting facts that are being less discussed and just to kind of put the full perspective out there. So, the split up obviously is ongoing. Seems like it's kind of a done deal. Some of the harsh words that have been said between Disney and Sony behind closed doors. We don't know the full brunt of it, but it definitely doesn't sound good. We do know that Disney did come out with a 50% offer, but as some sites are popping up and saying, a lot of the information I'm getting here came from both Gizmodo and Deadline. There were some interviews and some discussions with staff at the respective companies that supposed that Disney initially came at a 50% of the profits request, but also was willing to put in 50% of the financing to create any more joint Marvel and Disney films, or excuse me, Marvel and Sony films. So it wasn't just that Disney was asking from 5%, which is what they were getting before, to 50%. They were putting in 5%, they were getting 5%. Now they wanted to put in 50% and get 50%. Now apparently the reports that came out before was such that Sony wanted to walk away right then and there. I guess Disney was willing to. This is from some of the information that came out from Deadline. They were willing to put in 25% for profit sharing, both financing and revenue. But Sony had already kind of been pulling back pretty hard, and they were the ones that released a statement that was a little bit disingenuous. I know everybody's been painting Sony as bad guys, and this doesn't really help the case. They basically said, we really appreciate working with Kevin Feige. He can't be bothered to continue to be working with us. It wasn't as cold as that, but it was basically, he's a real busy guy. He doesn't have time to work with Spider-Man. Everything that he's saying, which isn't much, but again, through the grapevine, whatever can be believed, everything that Kevin Feige is saying is to the effect that he would love to keep on working on Spider-Man. He adores the character. So Sony kind of came out with this sort of saving face, I guess, kind of thing that made it sound like, well, Kevin really doesn't have time with all the new properties they're starting in Phase 4 and blah, blah, blah. It's unfortunate that that was the tact that they chose, because clearly it isn't the case. Or at least that's, if it's a they said kind of thing. So Sony is saying something different than what Kevin Feige, Marvel, Disney are all saying. So who's to be believed? I don't know, but Kevin Feige definitely isn't too busy to necessarily work on the film, it sounds like. The other thing is that Jon Watts, the director, is not actually tied into any contractual further movies, is my understanding. It would be a really big shame to lose him, because I've really liked his vision on the properties so far. And, apparently there is some talks coming from the Disney side of the fence here that they are looking to possibly recruit Jon Watts to do some directing in their films within the shared MCU, and then kind of leave Disney to it. Now, based on what Sony is saying, or excuse me, leave Sony to it with their solo Spider-Man movies. Now, based on what Sony is saying, that they're thankful to Kevin Feige and are just going to continue off the work that he left for them to do. I don't really trust them to do that, as I said in my last video on this matter. I would trust them even less if Jon Watts wasn't the one helping execute whatever vision is taken without Kevin Feige. So, without both of those guys attached to this picture, it's going to be a pretty bad affair, I think. But we'll see. I'm hoping that it doesn't turn out to be a sorry affair, in the sense that maybe the Sony execs will see that there's a version where even if it was less than 25% but more than 5%, that Sony and Disney could be happy with. I feel like Disney kind of holds a lot of the power in this, and Disney's certainly not a kind of charitable organization. 50% of a $1 billion movie is a lot to ask for a potential $1 billion movie. I believe the first Spider-Man put in about like 880,000. The second one was just over $1 billion. And that's just the standalone films. So I think Sony and it is right to be guarded of the character. Some of the last things that came out about this whole drama was regarding Stan Lee's daughter. It did sound to me, so take this with a grain of salt because this has my own coloring in it, but she had basically said that Disney really treated her father like a joke, and and that his properties have always been controlled by different creators in the comics, which is true. The many properties that Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and various other creators at the start of Marvel, there was a lot of diversity insofar as creative minds putting work into the characters goes. But her claim was basically such that Disney treated everything, that all of his work as a joke, didn't have good respect for him, didn't treat him well. I have a hard time believing that based on some of the other directors and people that Disney/Marvel Studios has been willing to work with. The likes of Taika Waititi, Kenneth Branagh. Obviously, he was from back in Phase One, but to have a great comedic director and a Shakespearean director, they run the gamut of the type of people that are directing their movies. Certainly, they're guilty of not having enough female representation and female directors, which hopefully they continue to amend with some of the work that they're doing in Phase 3 and Phase 4. But needless to say, I hope that the creative differences that exist between Sony and Disney don't necessarily result in a bad end. It seems that way for now, but I believe that there's a lot of creative stuff going on over at Disney Marvel Studios, and I can appreciate the criticism that there's a lot of one-sided, or rather kind of a one-note flavor to some of the Disney Marvel movies, that everything's pretty PG-13, everything's pretty funny except for when it's not, and I don't mean that the jokes don't necessarily land, but they try to go for heartfelt moments and things like that. But for better or worse, I think at this point we're going to have to just wait and see if the big execs and the pencil pushers can stop playing chicken with each other and come to an agreement. So this has been Andy with Nerds on the Run. Please like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. Let me know in the comments if you're listening what you want to see us work on here at Nerds at the Run. We are interested in comic books, movies, video games, all kinds of things. So we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.